Hello, and welcome to the first ever Unleash conference. Hello, I'm Ivar. I'm founder and creator of Unleash. I'm super excited to be here with all of you today in this virtual conference. In the spirit of Unleash, so we are a remote first company. We have a product used all over the world, and it was just natural for us to do this as a virtual conference, inviting everybody on planet Earth to join us together on our conference. And today I will talk about Unleash, our plans for the future, what are we currently focusing on. But before I do that, I would really love to take a minute and look about what we already been doing for the last 10 years. What you see here on this kind of chart is the number of commits, weekly commits to the Unleash repository, the main repository of Unleash. And keep in mind that this is just the main repository of Unleash. We also maintain 80 other repositories like the SDKs, example application, other products that we support. So this is just the Unleash application and all the changes that we do there on a weekly basis. The first version of Unleash, it was released back in 2014. This was the first version of Unleash. It was built by me and a smaller team, and my aim was to solve my own need as a developer. So at that time, in my company and my team, we already solved how we could ship code to production, how we could deploy code on a server. And so we had done a lot of DevOps work. We had implemented most of the techniques from the DevOps handbook, and we basically did kind of CI/CD, automated pipeline, and all of that. The challenge is obviously that I saw that there was a lot of friction. So in theory, we could deploy whenever we wanted. We didn't, because we had all like building features take some time. So we ended up having a lot of feature branches. It was tedious to manage all of these feature branches, set up test environments and all of that, get feedback on all the changes we were doing. It was also a bit tedious to collaborate. So I wanted to fix that. I discovered feature flags, and I saw that there wasn't a good solution on the market that solved it exactly how I wanted to be solved. So I built the first version of Unleash. What I find fascinating about the first version of Unleash is that it was quite simple. It was actually the application itself was just a small CRUD application. So it was basically a database with a UI on top of it. There was actually not a lot of code to manage like the simplest use case of feature flags. It was just define a flag, you can have like some configuration, and you can archive it. That was basically what you could do. The interesting part was the SDK. So there was a lot more code, thoughtfulness, and work going into the SDK. So if you actually go and look at the early versions of the Java SDK and Node SDK, you will see there was a lot more commits, more code, more thoughtfulness built into the SDK. And why was that? It was because I realized initially, in order to make Unleash scale and something that I would trust in my application that was running in production with kind of very high resilience requirements, performance requirement, 10,000s of requests per second. It needed to scale, and I needed to be able to trust that even though Unleash, the API went down, it wouldn't take down my application, because that would be a disaster. So this laid the foundation of the architecture that Unleash is built upon, where the server-side SDK is able to evaluate and figure out by themselves whether a feature flag should be on or off based on the rules that you configure in Unleash. The next version of Unleash obviously it was kind of a huge improvement on the UI. We always want to improve the UI, of course. It came out around 2017. But the main problem I wanted to solve with the version 2 was the problem that I started seeing, how could I have confidence that the dynamic configuration I did inside of Unleash actually took effect, actually worked? How could I know that the right version of my application was running and was receiving kind of some people receiving the feature that I protected with the feature flag? And it was particularly kind of interesting when it was kind of more the gradual rollout use case, when you only enable it for a certain percentage of your user. How could you know that that actually happened? Because it wasn't that easy to validate. So what we realized is that if we built kind of high-level usage metrics into the protocol, into the SDK, so they could report back to the API how often they evaluate a flag to true or false, it will make the life a lot easier for the developers or the people using Unleash, because you can get kind of that observability into the tool itself. Unleash version 2 was also the first version to gain more adoption outside of the initial team, like external teams, other teams in other companies starting to use Unleash, and they also started contributing back SDKs for the programming languages they were using. So we started seeing new SDKs like the Go SDK, .NET SDK, Ruby SDK, all came along around version 2. Version 3, This is a fantastic version of Unleash. I often refer to this as the Unleash Classic. This is, for a long time, was the most popular version of Unleash, obviously because it was awesome. But other than that, it was the reason it gained a lot of popularity in my in hindsight is that this is the first version that we decided to publish to Docker Hub. So it made Unleash extremely accessible to all the companies that wanted to use Unleash, because before version 2, before Docker, you needed to know how to run and deploy a node application in production. And not all companies are familiar with that and comfortable about doing that. But after the introduction of a container-based distribution and also obviously Kubernetes started gaining a lot of traction, a lot of companies got used to the idea of running applications as containers in production, made it a lot easier to adopt a tool like Unleash. We also saw new SDKs coming along, and this was also the version that started gaining so much traction in the community that we saw requests around, can you host this for us? Can you build these paid features for us? So this is also when I decided to, together with my co-founder, decided to explore the opportunity of a paid version of Unleash. Initially, we was thinking maybe this is a hosted version. That's why we called it Unleash Hosted in the beginning. And we learned a lot more. I think one of the biggest learning from that journey of offering Unleash as a paid solution was actually that a paying user is more willing to share their problems with you. They're willing to take the phone call to tell you their problems, what they're trying to solve, and how Unleash is part of that, and how they think Unleash can help them unblock that need. It's not that open source users are not willing to share. We just see that it's a lot easier to get access to a paying user just because you know who they are, but also that they are more willing to spend time with you. Version 4 of Unleash. Okay, this is when we have actually established the company around Unleash and lay the foundation for drastically changing the product. So we did a lot of behind the scene work here. It's not very visible in the first version of Unleash, version 4, but this is where we swapped out the entire UI framework. We started adopting Material UI. We had obviously hired people to start help me building Unleash, and we started building more kind of enterprise-grade capabilities, like adding the environment support. We added project support. We added SSO. We added a new permission model, RBAC. All of these things started coming together in version 4 behind the scenes. Version 5 of Unleash was released back in 2023. This is kind of a continuation of all the work we were doing and starting on in the early version of Unleash, and just added a lot of new great capabilities to Unleash. So we added dark mode, bulk operators, we improved the insights capabilities, also improved how you can inspect the connected SDKs to detect that they are all working and connecting correctly to Unleash. We also decided to build Unleash Edge. So Unleash Edge is taking over for the proxy. We learned a lot about the proxy, but we saw that there were certain limitations that we couldn't solve without rethinking everything. So we decided to build something new called Unleash Edge and make that available to everybody. Version 6 is the current version of Unleash. This is what we are currently offering. It was released back in June. It contains all the good stuff from the previous version and a lot more new enterprise-grade capabilities, but also a lot of bug fixes, actually, that edge cases that kind of it just iron out and make everything better all the time. The point of this story, this was 10 minutes. The point of this story is that Unleash is gradually improving over time. It's almost like fine wine. It gets better with time. And now 800 versions. So we have done 800 releases of Unleash since the first version. And it's a lot better now than it was back then. But still, the basics are the same. You can create flags, you can update flags, and all the basic functionalities are the same. It's just that we added so many more things that you can do in Unleash. And also the feedback from the team. One of the core developers told me the other day that it's actually a lot easier today to add new capabilities to Unleash than it was 2 years ago when he joined the team, which is a fantastic testament to what we're doing. So this is exactly what we're thinking, that a product should be living, a successful product should improve over time and not be like it used to be, at least in my experience, like a 10 years old application is the legacy application and you don't dare to change them. It should be the opposite. Any application that have real impact on the business, it should improve over time just getting better and better with all the changes you're doing. But how can we know that Unleash is improving over time? Well, we have to measure. And this is what we are doing with the Unleash product. So we have built in measuring capabilities into the core product. And this is actually the thing that our head of customer journey, Lisa, this was one of the first things she told the team, and she joined us back in 2021. We have to measure how satisfied our users are about using the product. And I said, yeah, great. How do we do that? And she actually told me how to do that. So that's fantastic. So we focused on, that was one of the first things that we did when we started the commercial journey back in 2021, was to build in this mechanism into the product so we could constantly measure that how well perceived is the Unleash product, and we can measure this over time, and we can see how it's improving over time. And we have skyrocketing ambitions for Unleash. So currently in Q3, we have measured a PNPS score of 17, which is, by the way, considered world-class. We are not satisfied with that. We want to be at 80 at least, from a scale from -100 to 100. And one of the things that we have identified, because what is fantastic about having this feedback component built into Unleash, is that, yes, we can measure kind of the actual numbers, but we also added the ability for the users to add kind of readable feedback back to the team. So we get clues. They don't give us the answer, but we get clues on what they find hard to do with our product. And one of the things that we identified over the last few months is that we are attracting more and more users to Unleash that are not that familiar with either Unleash, but also feature flagging in general. So we are now currently focusing, we're having an initiative where we are trying to do the onboarding experience a lot easier if you don't know a lot about feature flagging from before. And we believe that will make it a lot easier to get started with Unleash and, again, bring the scores back up again. Our purpose, our mission as a company is that we want to make life easy for developers. And if we take like a pause and think back, so I mentioned DevOps, CI/CD. I think kind of the DevOps in general have done tremendous things for software teams and companies around how we can ship software to a production environment faster, more predictable, more reliable. I am a strong believer in automation and that we should try to not do those things manually. We also learned from kind of the state of DevOps, the DORA report, that the kind of high-performing team, they are deploying quite frequently, hopefully multiple times a day. And that is fantastic because we are reducing the changes and it makes it a lot easier for us as developer to kind of know when we deploy something to a production environment, what we are deploying, and if something goes wrong, we know immediately what is going wrong. And kind of reducing the time from the code being created until it's deployed somewhere is just fantastic. It just accelerates the feedback mechanisms back to the team. But there is a fundamental challenge with this, and that is that building new capabilities, new features into our products, that actually takes some time. It's not done like in an hour usually. It takes some effort and some collaboration. It might even be multiple teams that need to collaborate and multiple stakeholders, and you need to have some help validating your assumptions and all of that. So it takes some time, but we still want to deploy often, but we don't necessarily want to release all the time. And this is exactly what we bring to the table. So Unleash enables teams to take full control of the release process so that you can confidently deploy new versions of your application all the time and decide when you're ready to start the release process. And when you do the release, you don't even have to enable it for everybody after that. You can do a gradual rollout. You can do kind of a few less important users first, maybe internal users first, validate that it actually works in production, and then you can gradually expose it to more users, allowing you to take more control on how you release new features. So we give away Unleash open source to everybody. So what is our kind of opportunity then? So we obviously have a paid version of Unleash, and this is how we put food on the table for all employees of Unleash and how we are able to take so good care of the Unleash open source product. The goal of the paid version is to solve needs for large enterprises. So they have strict requirements around security, privacy, all of these. Usually they get kind of DevOps and all of that. And being developer in these large environments is quite hard. It can be, you might have to really collaborate with a lot of different stakeholders, a lot of different teams, and doing your changes, there is high risk. You already have millions of users. You have like doing mistakes in production can be quite costly. So this is what Unleash brings to the table for these companies, is that we offer you the ability to take full control of your releases also in these larger companies. And obviously, we also built in a lot of enterprise capabilities into the product in order to allow companies to have the right level of control that they require. Everything we build in Unleash is kind of part of a bigger picture. We have a plan for this, a product vision, and it goes into 5 main categories right now. So yes, we have the Unleash platform. We have decided to do this in a single tenancy model where all customers are segregated. They have their own databases, their own namespace. We don't share data between customers. It's the most secure and privacy aware way we can imagine. It also allows customers to choose whether they want their data to be housed in Europe or in the US. We also have solved a lot of enterprise needs, and we constantly add more improvements in this area. And examples will be obviously SSO, SIM, approval flows, all of this. But then we have kind of the more product-specific capabilities that we are improving, or the areas we are improving. So one pillar is the easy to use and collaborate. And examples, why is this important? And this is because we believe that great software is built when multiple people collaborate on building and improving that software. And in order to collaborate, it needs to be easy to do that. Examples on capabilities that we are doing here is, for instance, our project model is open by default. So we strongly believe that even if you are not in a project, you should be able to see the flags. You can obviously hide a project if you really need to, but we strongly believe that there is value in having them open by default. And you can even cross projects, you can suggest changes to a different projects in order to kind of collaborate. Sometimes you need to collaborate with another team to test your side, your component, together with some new feature they are building. And making this available, accessible, searchable across all projects makes it a lot easier to facilitate this collaboration. We also believe in integration. So Unleash doesn't live in a vacuum. So we know that, okay, Unleash is used as part of building software and writing software and protecting that new piece. But in order to build software, there's a lot of other things going on. So you have a planning system. Usually that could be Jira, Linear, or something other kind of task management system. But then you also have like observability tools like your APM and your product analytics and all of that to observe your application in an environment. And we believe that Unleash should play well with these other players. So obviously Unleash should do feature management and do that really well. But we should also collaborate with these other tools and provide data between the tools. So we should make it easy to send signals from the other tools into the Unleash platform. And you should be able to use those signals to drive automated actions inside of Unleash. But Unleash should also share what's happening inside of Unleash with the other tools in order to make it easier. And the last pillar is that we also believe that we should help teams improve. And we have started investing a lot more in this area lately. An example of that is, for instance, we see that it's a lot of team is very easy to create new flags, which is fantastic. But we see that cleaning up flags is not that easy. And the kind of, we see that the ratio is just too off. We see companies create a lot more flags than they actually clean up. And we think we can do more in that area to highlight the technical depth, highlight where it's safe to clean up, and even help you with the cleanup process. Moving on. So one of the missions that we are currently working on, kind of the next version of Unleash, version 7 is that we strongly believe that we can take Unleash towards more like a purpose-driven feature management. So we have observed how thousands of companies are using Unleash to simplify their release process. And we see that Unleash has very powerful building blocks to do so. But we also see that the current process is quite manual, like a developer logs into Unleash, changes the configuration, and it's kind of tedious, and you have to do that all the time. What we are working towards is a future where we believe that we can focus more on what you're trying to achieve. What does good look like? What metrics do you care about for this feature? How do you know if you actually hit the goal? or if you should abandon this feature. This is something that we really deeply care about, and we want to move Unleash closer to that mission. One of the initiatives that we concretely do in this area is the release plan. So this is an initiative that we just started. We are doing a lot of proof of concepting. We are talking with our customers. We're talking with our users. We believe we can do more here. So what are we trying to do? So we want to enable you to define kind of how you plan to release a set of features. It could be one feature or multiple feature flags. It doesn't matter. Then you need to go through certain milestones. Maybe you do a gradual release plan. Maybe you even constrain it to only certain geographical regions or certain user types. And for each milestone, there might be metrics that you care about, like we should expose it to at least this many users, the conversion rate should be this, the error rate should not be about this. All of this is something that we want to capture in each of these milestones, so we can standardize, and obviously companies will have multiple different type of release plans that they can reuse when they do a release. But this allows us to increase the abstraction layer. So we're not talking about the actual configuration anymore, even though that's behind the scenes. We're talking about which milestones are we at and what is required to get to the next step, what type of data do we need to validate where we are at. Through this standardization, we believe it's going to make it a lot easier to collaborate, particularly if you're further away from a specific features being built, and understand where we are in the rollout process. But also it's an enabler for more automation, because suddenly we have defined the steps, we have defined what goods look like, what metrics we care about, and suddenly Unleash can do more of the work for you. This also opens the door for a better, more detailed insights in terms of we can more easily identify bottlenecks, problem areas, or when you start diverging from the norm. So we believe there is a ton of things that we can bring to the table by doing this initiative. Another thing that people ask me quite often about, what about AI? Well, how does that matter to Unleash? And will we even have developers in the future? So I think there are two things that I want to say to that. The first thing is that we're starting to see kind of one area. Developers are writing code and they get some assistant or kind of this co-pilot. And what that means, and this will probably be better over time, but what this means is more and more of the code that the developer writes will actually not be written by the developer. It will be more like the developer will kind of express a goal, and there will be more kind of auto-generated code around that, which is fine. But it means that you might not fully understand all the changes you're doing, and you're trying to achieve some goal. And I think that will just make it even more relevant to use techniques like feature flags to make sure that you can control the rollout and you can kind of reduce the risk and validate that the code change you are doing actually solves what you're trying to solve, the purpose, and that it's actually not introducing new problems to your product. The other aspect that is maybe more interesting for me personally is how can we leverage AI, machine learning, to improve Unleash? And I think there is a bunch of things that we can do, and particularly around how you interact with Unleash. So I wanted to actually stop or end this presentation with a small demo for proof of concept we did on the hackathon the other week, just a few weeks back. So in this example, one of the team, they created an AI assistant, and you can actually interact with this assistant. This is proof of concept on how we can integrate this into Unleash. And you can ask the assistant to create the flag for you. You can ask it to enable it. You can even ask about like the status, kind of describe how it is. And this is in English, but you can actually do this in any language. We tested it in Portuguese, Norwegian, English, of course. So this is kind of the beauty that you can start thinking about new ways to interact with a tool. I think this is going to be amazing, and we still don't know what this is going to be. And if you have ideas, please let me know, because I'm super excited about this. And for sure, this is no promise that we will ever add this assistant to Unleash. It's just that we have done some proof of concepting to validate that this is possible in order to learn more and get feedback. Because again, our mission is to make life easier for developers, and if we can figure out new tools, techniques to also make it easier to use Unleash, we are super keen on doing that, of course.